election victory. That's where we'll begin things as well. Josh Wilson, the Shadow Assistant Minister for Environment, thanks for your time. What have you made of the, win so far? There's obviously some contest about it, but Joe Biden, the President-elect now?
Well, I think it's great for the United States that their electoral process is held up and their democratic culture is held up, and we're going to see a peaceful transition of power.
Is that jumping the gun? What gives you faith there'll be a peaceful transition of power?
Well, so far, of course, I hope that that's what occurs. I think everyone in the United States and around the world hopes that that is what will occur. So far, it seems to be going that way, the way it's being reported, the way people are responding to it. There's obviously a lot of emotion around these kinds of processes and their outcomes. And that's always been the case, actually. But I think that people are looking forward to a Biden administration where the politics will be kind of dignified, collaborative problem solving, more than what we've seen in the past, which was sort of politics characterised by chaos, vanity, conflict, prejudice, lies. I think that's a shift that's good for the United States and good for the rest of the world.
It's quite a commentary on Donald Trump's presidency. Well,
I think we have to be straight up about these things, and we've seen some of the way that the President has conducted himself in the last week. It doesn't do any of us who live in liberal democracies around the world any favour if we don't recognise some of that conduct for what it is. It's not right, and it's potentially dangerous. It is important that leaders conduct themselves in a dignified way that respects the institutions that have put them in that position and that lays the path for ongoing, peaceful, stable, democratic governance.
One of the suggestions from Anthony Albanese and others within Labor was that Scott Morrison should pick up the phone and effectively tell Donald Trump, you've lost the election, you better concede. Is that a realistic course of action?
Look, I think the starting point is we are outsiders to the American process, and we should respect America, their process, and the voters there that decide the outcome of a presidential election. I think here in Australia, one of the things that we did see was some members of the government following along the Donald Trump line in questioning the validity of the process, making allegations about conspiracies and fraud. Those things aren't helpful. I think the Prime Minister could have had something constructive to say about that with respect to members of the government who are making those kinds of allegations. That's about as far as I think it should go.
So, but what about the phone call? I mean, what do you really think would have happened if Scott Morrison called up Donald Trump and say, Donald, Scott here, look, it's not looking good for you, don't worry about these legal challenges, you better concede?
I really have no idea. I can't imagine that President Trump was taking a lot of calls, so I think that would be idle speculation.
But this was the suggestion from senior senior ranks within Labor.
I think what Anthony was saying and what people in Labor have been saying is that we should always speak up for democratic process and we should always make observations about that process that are in keeping with what we'd want to see here in Australia, that people respect the result, that people don't make wild accusations, they don't run down the institutions and the culture that they are a part of by making wild, false claims.
But that's different to saying you should pick up the phone, as if Scott Morrison can solve this.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think that...
It doesn't sound like you think the phone call would have been...
I don't think it's realistically being suggested that we don't have a hotline to the US. I don't think President Trump is taking all that many calls in recent days. I think the suggestion was that we, as members of the Australian Parliament, participants and representatives in democracy here, should speak up for the principles of good democratic practice.
It doesn't sound like you think a phone call would have solved.
I wouldn't be making that phone call.
As the Prime Minister, you wouldn't be doing that?
I don't put myself in I don't go through that thought experiment. I've never gone through that thought experiment.
But when you say I wouldn't be making that phone call...
I personally wouldn't be making that phone call. I think it would be pointless for me to make that phone call. I don't think President Trump was taking those kind of calls.
OK. Just wanted to touch on your area as well of recycling. A big pivot from the government last election, of course. One of them was a $100 million recycling investment fund. You've criticised it, saying nothing's spent so far. Are there projects that it should have been spent on that you'd highlight?
Well, we need action on waste. We don't do very well in that space, particularly when it comes to materials like plastic. We barely recycle 12% of plastic. We know We've got a big problem with plastic accumulating in the marine environment. We have less infrastructure for plastic recycling and reprocessing in Australia today than we had in 2005. The issue with the government is that it makes a big song and dance about waste and recycling. I can understand that because I think it's an area of kind of environmental performance that they feel they can hang their hat on when they're doing nothing to fix the failed EPBC and nothing on climate change. But as with other sort of aspects of the government's performance, making a big flashy announcement saying here's $100 million and then 18 months later not a single dollar of that has been advanced. It was the centrepiece of their program.
There's 190 million as well for the Recycling Modernisation Fund, so that's money given out rather than loans. Perhaps that's going to be more popular. But I'm just interested in your thoughts around how Australia's got this position. We seemed to be relatively early adopters. Technology's about recycling, effectively. It seems like Australians now have no idea what to recycle. Some people sort of put nothing in there. Others look at the bottle. If it's got the little triangle or whatever product it is, it goes in the recycle. That makes it hard for the companies because just as a, looking at my local apartment one, the big recycling bin that you can see what everyone's put in there, I reckon about half of it shouldn't be in there, which just seems crazy.
Yeah, well, look, you've put your finger on what's a huge problem. So my kind of public service announcement part of speaking with you is to encourage people to go to their local government website and to Planet Ark, and we can all become better educated about what can be recycled. I've got my local council produces these little sort of bin magnets that show what goes into each of the bins. But it's not just down to the householder level or even to the business level. We need that larger systemic change, and it has to be at all parts of the circle. If we want to get to a circular economy, we need greater producer responsibility so that more products are recyclable and that some of those products include recycled content.
Just on that, I mean, if you get most plastic bottles, if you want to recycle that technically, I think depending on where you are, you've got to take the lid off because of some of the sorting materials, but also just a little plastic thing around the sort of waste of the bottle, that needs to be ripped off, and you should take that possibly to your local supermarket. I mean, people are not going to do that.
No, and it's not right that we expect the problem to be solved by people. That's why we need that sort of systemic change. There's some kinds of harmful single-use plastic that we should eliminate altogether. And then when it comes to other products, we need sort of something in place that helps producers create products that make recycling easy and that include recycled content, because that's where you get the pull-through. I mean, at the moment, the government's...
Yeah, the market to actually put the...
Yeah, to make use of what comes through from the infrastructure.
I know you've got your Keep Cup, which, you couldn't have brought anything else on today, I suppose, because anything better than recycling is not using it in the first place. We'll keep talking about it because I know the government has an ambitious target and you're following it closely. Josh Wilson, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Tom.